In the dark city of Comarag, every overlord had his or her own sanctuary, a place where they could retreat to when they grew weary of the endless plotting and betrayals of Dark Eldar society, where they could rest without fearing someone would plant a poison knife in their back. It was necessary, even if no one would admit to it out loud, and spending too much time in such a place was a sure way to bring doom upon oneself, as the lower orders sensed weakness and moved to take advantage of it. The practice had already been in use when the old noble houses had ruled Drukhari society, and the Cabals had continued it. Abzdrubael Vect, master of the Cabal of the Black Heart and supreme overlord of Comarag, was no exception to this rule, unlike so many others. As the discussion with his old rival El Uriak, the tyrant of Shah Dum, progressed, he had felt the need to withdraw for a while, to think about his next move. He did not doubt for a moment that El Uriak saw these negotiations as an opportunity to do away with Vect and crown himself undisputed ruler of the true Eldar. In fact, he would have been disappointed if he didn't. From the moment the tyrant had entered Comarag under the applause of millions of Eldar, there had been dozens of attacks from one onto the other, through enough layers of deniability that neither had bothered making a fuss when the attempts were foiled. Vec didn't hold El Uriak's attempts on his life against him, nor did the tyrant hold the supreme overlords. In many ways, old enemies were the only true companions a lord of the Dark Eldar could keep over the centuries. It had grown a bit tiresome, though, which was why both Vect and Uriak had agreed to withdraw from the discussion personally for a time, while their subordinates hammered out the details of the alliance and revealed each lord from incompetent servants. Besides, both of them were running out of expendable assassins, and neither wanted to send their true valuable killers to their death if it could be helped. Of course, even here, the Supreme Overlord didn't allow himself to relax completely. He knew all too well that even the most secure lair could be breached, given enough time and resources. At least he was safe from the treachery here. All those who had taken part in the building that private retreat were dead, slain by his own hand, from the slaves to the architect. No one but him knew about this place's defenses, about the countless traps and protections he had installed. The entire refuge was built inside its own dimensional pocket, and its connection to the rest of Comarag could be severed with the press of a single button. The entire dark city could fall, and Vect would be safe here. The only other living being to have ever been given access to this lair was sitting next to him. His clone, perfectly identical, crafted by his homunculi to be completely loyal to the Supreme Overlord. The ultimate body double, and Vec's final trump card against assassination attempts. He didn't really need him here, but staying together as often as possible was one of the requirements of the ruse. All of this explained why, when there was a soft knock on the door, Vec was quite surprised. When the door opened, despite Vec clearly remembering having locked it behind him, and his visitor stepped through, that surprise turned into shock. The intruder was tall and wore bulky, brutish armor of monkey design, bearing the slave marks of the ruinous powers. It was painted black with white ornaments, and a stylized bird was painted onto the right shoulder pauldron. A great cloak hung from his shoulders, made of what appeared to be solidified smoke, and Vec could make out faces peering from within its folds, gone wherever he tried to look at him directly. He wore a hood of ragged fabric, and his face was covered by a helmet with a long, curved beak. He carried no obvious weapon, but Vect very much doubted he was defenseless. For Vect recognized the emblem of the shoulder pad for what it was. He even recognized what the beaked helmet meant. Even in Comarag, the apothecaries of the Raven Guard were spoken of with as much respect as the Eldar could ever hold for lesser races, and more than a little fear. The homunculi covens themselves were famous for their ruthlessness and lack of morality. Even among the Dark Eldar, were stated to avoid dealings with these servants of the primordial annihilator. Of course, when you asked them directly, they would tell you it was because they had nothing to learn from newcomers to the field of fleshcraft, and they didn't want them to steal their secrets. A dozen possible scenarios flashed in Vec's mind in an instant, and then the Space Marine bowed his head towards the two Eldar, remaining a respectful distance away. So Scenario 7 it was. Greetings, Supreme Overlord Asdrubal Vect, greatest of all the lords of the Drukhari, he said in perfect Eldar, using the dialect spoken by the inhabitants of Cormorag with only the slightest accent. I come in peace, meaning no harm to you or yours. My deepest apologies for the intrusion, but it was the only way I could meet you. Who are you? Asked Vect's duplicate, still sitting, giving every appearance of being completely at ease, just like Vect himself was. The gaze of the Space Marine moved between the two of them, not surprised to see more than one Vect, but not knowing which was the true one. Or if he knew, pretending he didn't. I am Vincent Six, Chief Apothecary of the Raven Guard, he declared, and Vect slightly raised an eyebrow. The words the monkey had used had several layers of context in the Eldar tongue, all of which alluded to far more importance to the title than mere dominion over healers. It was impressive to see one not of their race wield their language with such mastery. It was also polite. How did you get here? Asked Vect, wondering if he should have the homunculi resurrect the dead architects so that he could torture them more for their failure. We have our ways to go where we need to be. It does not really matter how I came here, Supreme Overlord. What matters is that I have come a very long way to make you an offer. An offer from the legendary Raven Guard. Well, if nothing else, this should be interesting. Go ahead, waved Vect. You deserve the right to speak your piece for finding your way in here. Thank you. Then if I may, began Vincent. Things are changing, Lord Vect. We stand at the turning of ages, where all that was, it put into question, and the destiny of the entire galaxy may be shaped by the actions of those with enough power and will to see it done. You know this to be true. It is why you have put aside your grudges against El Uriak and called for the unity of your race, is it not? You know your kind must be united, and as much as it can be. My reasons are my own, said the duplicate briskly. I don't need to explain them to you. Of course, but surely you can see the changes coming. Our misguided cousins, working together, have almost succeeded in bringing about their new godling, and caring that the only thing that would allow it to reach its full power is the extinction of your race. The Crimson King has risen from his slumber, and the ghosts of the vengeful dead now fight alongside his silent sons. In the ruin storm, Robut Guilliman had returned, and his legion moves against the Iron Cage even now. And then, of course, there is what happened at Chemos. Times are changing, Lord Vect. Chaos is on the rise, and it will not be stopped this time. Even here in your precious Dark City, you have seen the signs. The mandrakes know what is coming. The seals that have kept you safe from the Dark Prince are falling. But for all your efforts, you are still doomed by the mistakes of your ancestors. You reject the power of the youngest god, deny yourself that power, the power that is rightfully yours. I will not be a slave to anyone or anything, said Vect calmly. The Dark Prince has more than enough slaves, waved Vincent dismissively. What he needs are champions. More than that, he needs avatars, vessels capable of bearing his power onto the materium. The Eldar are Slaanesh's creators, and his chosen people. The Drukhari in particular, you live your entire lives in dedication to him, even though you refuse to admit it to yourselves. You feed his hunger with your every breath, and it is only your fear that keeps you from receiving the rightful reward for such loyal service. You already serve Slaanesh. You know it to be true, but if you only did it willingly, then the curse that had afflicted your race for the last 10 millennia would turn into the blessing it was always meant to be. Of all the species of the galaxy, your kind are the closest to their god, Lord Vect. One way or another, damnation is coming for your people. It falls to you to choose what form it takes. You may resist the end and become nothing more than shrieking souls, consignated to an eternity of torment in Slaanesh's palace as punishment for rejecting your destiny. or you may embrace what you truly are and take your place at the Dark Prince's side, a lord of the new galaxy to come. It is a choice all the souls that matter will have to make sooner or later." "Do you think me a fool?" declared the duplicate, standing tall and proud, glaring at the Raven Guard defiantly. "I know the true price of submitting to chaos. I was there during the fall, monkey. I saw the birth of She Who Thirsts and what she did to my people. With her first breath, she swallowed our souls. With her first cry, she destroyed our empire. I have spent my entire life protecting my people from her, even if they certainly aren't grateful for it. This entire city stands because of me, because of what I did, and I will never..." The duplicate's words stuttered, and he looked down at the chest, where a blood stain was spreading. His mouth moved as he tried and failed to speak, and he fell down before he hit the ground. "Tell me more about this power you offer," said Vecht, not lowering his pistol. "Of course," replied Vincent smoothly. "But if you would forgive my curiosity, am I talking to Asdrubal Vecht, who killed his replicate for lacking vision, or his replicate who seized the chance to step out of the original shadow and forge his own destiny?" Vecht smiled coldly and said nothing.